Ilaria, you study the early moderns, and I want to understand how the early modern painters use their work to attain reality beyond the normal, to go towards transcendence, to transcend reality.
So at the start of the 20th century, Wassily Kandinsky, who was trained as a lawyer and then moved to Germany and became a painter, was very interested about this idea of the spiritual in art. He wrote a book in 1909 on the spiritualism of art and started to do these paintings that were really a set of forms and colors, completely abstract. This was quite new for the time, and for him, that painting should create a relationship with the viewer that would transcend the current reality. He was very influenced by a woman called Madame Blavatsky, who was also Ukrainian and arrived in Europe in different ways. She traveled all over the world, but
It's the foundation of theosophy.
That's the foundation of theosophy. She had an early death in her family when she was a child, and from that on, she sort of tried to bridge a dialogue with the past to look into the future. So Wassily Kandinsky was very influenced by someone like Madame Blavatsky, who tried to bridge Eastern thoughts and religions within the Western thought. For Blavatsky, it was very important to look at the past to go towards the future. Kandinsky and a number of different painters around him, among which some fantastic women painters like Gabriele Münter or Franz Marc, August Macke, they were all based in south of Germany, in Bayern, and they were embodying also a particular way of life, closer to nature, meditating, closing to the spiritual realm. And this closeness to these outer elements helped them create works of art that would take us, the viewers, into another realm.
Were they into theosophy as a way of thinking or as a quasi-religion? So what was Madame Blavatsky's relationship with the painters?
So they read her work. I think Kandinsky probably met her as well, went to the conferences, and the relationship was to really try to embed that way of thinking. So Kandinsky publishes a book with Franz Marc called The Blue Rider, Der Blaue Reiter, really based on these ideas and mixing Eastern elements and elements from other cultures into this book that was really for them the founding of this new way of abstract painting. What this new way of painting should do for the viewer is to connect on an emotional level. And through this emotional level, you might be able to attain a spiritual dimension.
What are some specific ways that form and color in an abstract way can do that?
Yes, for Kandinsky and those painters, colors had a very specific way to call different emotions in the viewers. Oh. So his whole theory, Kandinsky's theories of colors, or Paul Klee theories of colors, really look into that, and how the combination of certain colors and forms can reach abstraction in a different level.
What are examples of that?
So, for example, the combination of red, blue, and yellow.
Yeah.
So in the 1920s, when they are called by Walter Gropius to teach in this extraordinary school, who was the Bauhaus, they really look into these theories and write them down. And the classes are theories of colors, theories of shape. There is another interesting figure at the Bauhaus called Johannes Itten, who is very close, who takes theosophy up to another level and brings into the Bauhaus this Eastern theory of Matsdatsnan, which was half a religion, half a sect. You had to eat very specific things in order to be closer to creation. But what they all shared was this creative impulse that one had to be prepared mentally and physically. And that, for Itten, came through eating very specific things.
Like what? What were they eating?
A lot, like they were all vegetarians, for example, or went on and ate all white things for weeks on end. This created a lot of tensions in the Bauhaus and Walter Gropius, and at the end of, in the middle of the 20s, Itten was forced to leave. It created a clash with students. They became really adept, like almost fanatics of this.
And was all the art abstract?
Yes, all the art was abstract. I think for them it was so important to cut with the 18th century and to propose, and to try to reach the viewer in a different way. And in order to elaborate this specific way, then they needed something else apart from forms, colors. Then geometry comes and play a very big role. So not only certain shapes and forms get the viewer, but also geometrical forms. So the circle had to be black. The square had to be red.
And what's the reason for that?
The combinations
of colors and form had a specific resonance together.
Exactly. Specific colors and forms would resonate in the viewer in a specific way.
I'd like to go into some depth. So what's the reason that the circle was black and the square was red, or rather than the reverse?
They all experimented in that. And for example, for the Russian suprematists, for Mayevich, the square had to be black. So it was the other way around. They debated a lot on that. And they did a lot of experiments within geometry, but also within the natural elements.
When you say they did an experiment, they painted and asked people their emotional reaction to whether the square was red or black?
They did, yes, they did
really?
Exactly something like that. They worked with natural elements to see how it worked best. And then they taught these theories. Of course, it was not strict. It was not very strict. There was a lot. The idea was to try to enable students to have a very free approach to forms and colors.
Sure.
So there is a tension between prescribing things and then letting the artists be very free in their interpretation.
Other than Kandinsky, who were the major artists during that whole period that represented the school?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because in Western European modernism, you can see artists thinking something similar in different places. So Kandinsky from Russia was active in south of Germany. There's Kupka with Hungarian that then moves to Paris. There's Robert and Sonia Delaunay, which think about orphism. So again, these abstract colors and forms have to reach the viewer. And in Russia, there's Mayevich with suprematism and Litsitsky, which then moves from Russia to Holland and then in Germany. But they all try to do something similar. They're also very interested in scientific research, and they follow that very closely. So they are able to unite very disparate things, from scientific researches on perception and philosophy to Madame Blavatsky. Someone like Henry Bergson, for example, was very important to them.